Blatant mummies continue to discuss pharaonic civilization, especially when discussing its dark side. Even after thousands of years, the pharaonic civilization's mysteries persist. The enigma surround Blatant mummies and the mysteries of pharaonic or ancient Egyptian civilization will be covered in Files. The enigma surrounding King Tutankhamun's mummy, the many unknowns surrounding the pharaonic mummies, and even Amazon's production of a documentary to investigate the causes of death of 22 participants in the Tutankhamun grave dis. Strangely, they died within 7 years of discovering Tutankhamun's cemetery. Among them are other mummies that have recently emerged as the mummy, the backs of which are the horror of each of her viewers, that is, the mummy of the Stark woman, the mummy of the Stark young man, and the story of their death very wonder and frightening, especially the mummy of the Stark young man who has a mystery and a very dangerous gamble of intrigue of the very ancient Egyptian civilization. Here we ask who are the owners of the Blatant mummies and to die, and they are in such a frightening form? We answer it in today's story, but before we go back to the details of the subject, please like the page, subscribe and activate the buzzer button to find out the new. The Stark mummies were discovered in 1881 in a cache at the Naval House in Luxor. This discovery was made by archaeologist Justin Maspero. It was the custom of the priests at that time to hide the bodies of kings, princes, princesses and important figures of that era in a secret hidden place by protecting their property from theft of sanctity. Due to the high demand for Stark mummies after their transfer to Egyptian museums, scientists decided that archaeologists, headed by Dr. Zahi Hawass, must explain the frightening and terrifying shape of the mummies. Each mummy has a different story from the other mummy. Especially the screaming mummy of the young man and her death story is a bit strange, but we leave it to the other half of the episode. With the woman's Blatant mummy, the signs of pain and torture are very clear, and she dies on the embalming position of the very strange lady at the time, with some observation of the open mouth and her head tilted on the right side. Her legs were twisted in the ankle area, so embalming the bodies of women at the time was necessary to have a closed mouth as well as the straight body. This mummy was known through linen roll paper associated with this woman, which had her name written on it. Amun passed on the daughter of King Sequin Ra, the king who ordered to start the war with the Hyksos. The princess's mummy returned to the 17th family. After examining the Stark watery by archaeologists headed by Dr. Zahi Hawass, they found that the cause of the mummy's Blatant death was thanks to atherosclerosis, blockage of blood vessels, stiffness and damage to the muscles of the guts. This resulted in severe heart failure, resulting in her screaming and death due to the condition. A period of time without detection of her death, resulting in stiffness of muscles and joints, and so that mummifiers could return the location of the body to the traditional pattern of bodies at the time, and no one was charged. It is noteworthy that it is the first body in mummy history to be an explanation for her death from cardiopulmonary arrest. A young man's Blatant mummy can be alien to the scream on which she died. It wasn't quite as wrapped in linen as the rest of the mummies, but it was completely wrapped inside unclean goat skin, but this was an indication of the deceased's entry into hell. What are the explanations for goat skin? Now goats are the enemy of the sun machine of the traditional Egyptian pharaohs. This showed that his sins were punishable. Despite this custom, priests did not take their guts out of the belly. Even the coffin that buried the dead was simple and was not embellished with the diamonds of my painting with the deceased's name written on it until it degraded the deceased. What are the explanations why this happened? When the mummy was found inside the hidden tea house in Luxor, it was completely buried next to the mummy of King Ramses III, one of Egypt's greatest monarchs. This was a screaming mummy check. When analyzing the body mummy of King Ramses III, buried next to the young man's glaring mummy and the use of Chinese rays, they found that he died in general, but the cause of death was not normal. And when the mummy checks carefully and finds a stab wound at the neck, it's thought to be. The dagger is very protective. From stab force the stab reached the pharynx and trachea, thus the king died as a result of a plot. What are the causes of the king's murder? What does it have to do with the young man's blatant mummy? The solution in the papyrus is called the harem plot. Papyrus implies that King Ramses III was married to 2 women and recommended that her eldest son Ramses IV inherit from the throne of several. But this speech did not impress the second wife Queen Tin because she wanted her son to inherit the throne from after his son, who caused the murder of King Ramses III. But Ali could not kill the king alone, so she asked the blatant young man to help her kill the king and also hired a group of palace women and a group of Egyptian army commanders at the time who hated the king, some soldiers, a group of king's guards, some priests and a witch, and ordered them to demonstrate in front of the palace and attack her. However, the papyrus did not mention that the king was killed because at that time the king would write that the king had died murdered, but was captured on the subject in Ali al-Babra's drawing that the royal boat was inverted. His soul ascended to heaven. After analyzing the king's body and linking it with papyrus, it was his second wife who instigated murderers to inherit her son from the throne, and the young mummy who screamed after the DNA analysis discovered that she was the son of King Ramses III. Her father was killed until he inherited from several thrones, and when the body was analyzed by Chinese radiation, they found the aftermath of an execution or hanging while hanging him shouted and died of this situation. All those charged with the murder of King Ramses III were sentenced. Judgments and omissions according to the role of the conspiracy, including execution, suicide, imprisonment, nose cutting or ear piercing. We learn from the young man's blatant story who killed him.